Making It Grow is brought to you in part by Santee Cooper, South Carolina's state-owned electric and water utility. More information on green power and energy conservation programs online at santeecooper.com. The South Carolina Department of Agriculture, reminding you that certified South Carolina agricultural products help make South Carolina grow. McLeod Farms in McBee, South Carolina. This family farm offers seasonal produce, including over 22 varieties of peaches. Glory Foods, celebrating Southern food with a soulful heritage. Glory Foods, a way of inviting South Carolina back to the dinner table. FTC Diversified, a proud part of your local communities, providing communication, entertainment, and security. Art Fields, a 10-day art competition in Lake City, South Carolina. Additional funding provided by International Paper.
If you're still going outside and gardening in this weather, I think you ought to sit right down and write yourself a letter and pat yourself on the shoulder and say, good job, I'm a real trooper, because it's hot in South Carolina. But I hope that inside tonight, where you are, that it's cool and you're comfortable. I'm Amanda McNulty, and I want to thank you for joining us for Making It Grow. We're coming to you live from historic downtown Sumter. And Teresa Lott is already in the chat room, and she's got the door wide open and a big invitation for you. When we go inside, she's going to tell you how easy it is to push those buttons and be right in there and part of the fun. We have a wonderful treat for you tonight. Making It Grow takes trips, and everyone in South Carolina and the nation has probably seen gardens that Jinx Farmer had his magical hands involved with, and tonight we are going to the source of his inspiration, the soil that really created Jinx and taught him to be a plantsman. You will enjoy that visit to Beach Island. We also will have a visit with John Nelson, our favorite professor at the University of South Carolina, and tonight we've got a real treat. We've got two of our friends from Moore Farms Botanical Gardens, and we're going to learn how you can garden inside if it's too hot to go out. Oh, what fun we've got. So let's go inside and get started. Teresa Lott is a natural resources agent, and boy, in the summertime, the natural resources, especially water, are particularly important. And Teresa, some people, you know, it's hot, it's 98 degrees, and the plants kind of wilt, and they say, oh, I've got to water. But sometimes we're wasting water. What's the best way to figure out when you should water?
Amanda, that is a great question, and sometimes it's hard to tell if the plant has too much water or not enough because the symptoms look very similar. So I've heard Amanda give great advice to see if your plant needs water. Take that very fancy tool, your finger, insert it in the soil. If it's dry, it's probably a good idea to water. You do want to be careful what time of the day you water. It's usually a good idea to water early in the morning when there would already be dew on the plant, so that leaf surface would already be wet. That way we're not increasing the time that the plant surface is wet, which can promote especially fungal diseases. Have you ever thought about beekeeping? Well, you might want to check out Clemson Extension's 100 Years, either Facebook page or website. Today's featured photo of the day is called To Be or Not To Be, and it explains that backyard beekeeping is becoming an increasingly popular hobby, and Clemson has information in terms of research and teaching and extension. So you can find out more about the 100 years or about beekeeping through the Clemson Extension Facebook page or website. And speaking of Facebook, I hope you'll go to the Making It Grow Facebook page right now and click on the chat button, which is on the left-hand side now. It's green, says Let's Talk. Click there. You'll be directed into the chat room where you have to click to log in and join in the discussion. You can log in with Rumble Talk or Facebook or Twitter accounts. We already have 7 speakers, but I hope that number increases dramatically in the near future. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you, Teresa, and it's always a pleasure to welcome Rebecca Turk to the set.
Thank
Rebecca is in charge of educational activities at Moore Farms Botanical Gardens, and my favorite thing about you is that you grew up near the Bluebell Ice Cream Factory.
Yes, born and raised, Brenham, Texas. That's our claim to fame. So
Yeah, well, that's a pretty good claim to fame.
it's delicious.
And, and you've got something that one of my master gardeners came and had
Yes.
an exciting day with you. We're going to show off Ruth Ann Bigger's handiwork. What was this workshop y'all had?
This was a going to press class. We offer classes every month, and this was a flower pressing class where they got to go into the garden, harvest all their flowers, come back in, do microwave presses with them, and then create these beautiful artwork to take home. So each one got a canvas like this. This was Ruth Ann's beautiful bouquet that she made.
Well, she is very artistic, and she said that she had a wonderful time, and I think later in the show we'll learn about more educational opportunities that y'all present.
Sounds great.
Okay, and a new face from Moore Farms Botanical Garden, and that is Matt Lobdell. I hope I said it right, Matt. And you have an interesting journey down the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. So tell us all about yourself and how you ended up down here.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised on the island of Martha's Vineyard, which is south coast of Massachusetts, and I was most recently living in Delaware, where I was doing my master's work, and right about the time I finished up there, I saw a job posting at the Moore Farms Botanical Garden, and thought, why don't I just continue my trip down the East Coast? And here I am in the South.
Well, and welcome to humidity.
Yes, thank you.
And Dr. John Nelson, we talked to him earlier, and he said that he had heard about a very exciting article publication that you'd had that was quite an honor. Tell us what that was.
That's right. So I just recently had a paper come out in the Plantsman, which is a journal from the Royal Horticultural Society. This was about the genus Styrax, which are woody trees and shrubs.
And we have some here. In
Yep, we
our
have
state.
two native to South Carolina. And yeah, very ornamental, nice white flowers in the late spring. And the paper's about some of my thesis work and very photo heavy, so it's definitely a very, very good read.
Well, we'll expect you to send some pictures next time you come.
Will
look at
do.
some pictures of Styrax. How about that? And one of the things that's fun about South Carolina is going to our local farmers markets, our state farmers markets, and our certified roadside stands, and learning and meeting the people who grow the things that make life so wonderful. And recently at the West Columbia State Farmers Market, they had a family fun day, and Making It Grow went up there, and we had a blast, and we're going to share a little bit of the fun with you now. times at the West Columbia State Farmers Market Family Fun Day, and do check out the farmers markets in your area. Get to know your local farmers. Be sure that you always look for that certified South Carolina tag, and support South Carolina agriculture. It's a big part of our economy, and it'll make you feel good as it goes down your throat. Because it all tastes just delicious. Well, this is your initiation. We have our first caller, Matt, and Virginia is calling us from Seneca, which is in the upper part of the state. Virginia, we're glad to hear from you. And how can we help you tonight?
Well, I just noticed that some of my black-eyed Susies are just wilting and dying, and when I pull them up, the roots will be covered in a white, powdery substance that looks like mildew. Just wondering if you know what it might be.
My goodness. Have you been giving them any extra water, and have they been in this spot for a long time, Virginia? What's the history of them?
Well, they've been there several years, but I've never had the problem before, and I usually fertilize with worm dirt and Osmocote or something like that.
And y'all been getting exceptional rainfall or anything up there?
No, not getting very much this year. Now, we did a lot last year, but not this year.
Well, my goodness. Well, anybody got any ideas? It sounds like some kind of root rot is going on with them, and usually those black-eyed Susans are so easy.
My first thought was, too much moisture, because a lot of times they'll mildew from getting too much water, but if it hasn't received a lot of rainfall, not a lot of extra overwatering, then I'm not sure what it would actually
She said she'd been putting worm compost and things on. If you get a heavy, when I put organic matter out, I try to just put maybe a quarter of an inch. Do you think if you got a heavy dose of organic matter, it might be holding too much moisture in the soil, Matt?
It could be, but I'm not too sure. I mean, I kind of know as black-eyed Susans being like indestructible. So.
Yeah. I just, again, welcome to gardening. Who can tell? It sounds like all I can think of is maybe the mulch got a little bit heavy. That's a wonderful mulch, a wonderful addition to the soil, but maybe in moderation. So I hope that'll help, and I hope you've got enough left that you'll have a great stand of them next year. Kathy's calling us from Albemarle, North Carolina. Kathy, thanks for calling us across the state line. Yep, these new phones are wonderful. You never have to worry about long distance charges anymore. So bring it on. What's happening in North Carolina?
Not a whole lot. It's just hot up here.
Now, same thing. Same here.
I got a question for you. I'm making mason bee houses, and I was wanting to know if I could make them out of cedar. I'll hang up and let you talk about it.
Well, I'm so glad somebody is trying to attract some of our native pollinators, and I don't know. Anybody have an idea? I don't know that cedar would repel them.
I don't know that they would or not. I know a lot of different counties have local beekeeper associations where there might be someone in a local region that she could contact. I know we have a really strong one in Florence. Our carpenter just built us some bee houses. I'm trying to think of what he made them out of, but I don't see why cedar would be a problem, but it does very strong scent though, to where I don't know if that would deter them from the hives or not.
But and honest to Pete, I honestly think I remember somebody telling me that to attract, maybe it's to get the carpenter bees to stay away from your house, that you put up some cedar boards. So it may be that they like cedar. I don't know how hard cedar is. I know it's supposed to be resilient to rot, but maybe it's a good thing for them to work into. But at any rate, we applaud people who are doing anything to protect the pollinators. And you go home and find out what y'all are using down there.
I will for sure, and I'll email you.
Okay, great. And thanks for that. That was an interesting call, and we were happy to hear about that going on. We've got David calling us from Marion. David, we appreciate your calling us tonight, and I hope you don't have too bad a problem. What's happening up there with you?
Got mulberries up here, and I don't have no caterpillars on them, but my leaves are starting to turn. They're just rotting out on me there. I have put Miracle Grow on them. We've had lots of rain this year, but I don't know what the problem is with them.
So your mulberry leaves are rotting.
Right.
Are they getting like brown patches on them and then kind of falling apart, or what do the symptoms look like, David?
They're getting brown and falling apart.
Oh, I am so sorry, because you think mulberries would just be indispensable. I'm sorry we brought you on for a night that's nothing but rot so far. But he said they've had a lot of rain, and he's put Miracle Grow on. Do you think sometimes if you over-fertilize things, it makes them more susceptible to fungal infections if the leaves are real tender?
Yeah, that could probably be an issue. Haven't heard too much about that. I know mulberries aren't always the longest lived trees, so depending on how old that is, we could be just getting near the end of its lifespan.
Have any thoughts?
I mean, I know over-fertilizing makes a plant much weaker. And so if it's something that he's done year after year after year, just as you mentioned, that could be something that could have detrimental effects to it. But, you know, as long as they said they got a lot of rain, but leaf fall is very common with drought. Maybe it's not getting enough water, but if they're actually rotting off, then it could, some sort of stress that plant's going through right now, and that's how it's saving itself.
You know, and it might be that you'd want to, I don't know, but maybe you could, you know, if you looked at how you fertilize some other things like blackberries and blueberries and all, it might give you an idea of fertilizer. And maybe if you used a slow release fertilizer, then even if you were getting a lot of rain, you wouldn't have to keep reapplying like the Miracle-Gro. So maybe it's just gotten a little bit, the leaves may have gotten a little bit too lush from all that wonderful attention you were giving them. But
so checking the root health maybe too.
Okay, yeah,
possibly.
Yeah, look down. It's always good to dig around and get your fingers dirty and see what's going on. Well, Teresa's fingers are busy, but I don't think they're getting dirty. But we're going to find out about the chat in the chat room.
Not dirty over here since we're just inside on the keyboard, but definitely clicking away. We have a busy night in the chat room right now. 10 speakers and 4 viewers. The conversation is a little bit sad, I'm afraid, because people are experiencing declines in their garden, which is pretty normal for this time of year. We talked a little bit about a problem with a dogwood tree who doesn't seem to be happy. The leaves are turning brown and wilting, and I'm suspecting that it might just not be in a good location. They're meant to be understory trees, so they like a little bit of shade, and this tree is in full sun. So it might be just having some leaf scorch going on and would be happier in a more shady location. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, we would love to have you. Go ahead, go to the Facebook page. There's lots of room and lots of time still, so jump in the discussion. Amanda, back to you.
Q, and I'm glad y'all have got a lively crew already active in the chat room. We're going now to Dr. John Nelson, who is our favorite professor at the University of South Carolina, and I think he's gearing up because that dreadful, it's not dreadful for John, and it's not dreadful for his students, but I can remember when school was starting back again, I'm like, oh no. But his students are very fortunate because they're going to have the happiest, most fun teacher and be in a great class. John, what you got for us tonight as far as a mystery plant?
Well, thanks, Amanda. You know, you all have been talking about how hot it is.
Yeah.
Amanda, it isn't hot. It's warm, but it's not hot. I mean, Columbia is famously hot, but otherwise it's just sort of warm. But now, for those of you who are not interested in great heat, I recommend the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yes.
And you could go up to some beautiful places in the mountains and see excellent scenery as well as plant life, and that's what we're going to do tonight. I had some pictures sent to me from some real nice people up in Saluda, which is just across the border, and Walter and Sherry Hoover, I think you may know them or know some of their friends. But anyway, they sent me a picture of a very, very wonderful plant that's quite medicinal and has been used for years and years and years. It's a plant that is, the botanists haven't figured out what family it's in actually, but it's a plant that produces a pretty simple flower. It doesn't have any petals. It has a bunch of stamens, and the plant will produce only 2 leaves, and then this one kind of dumpy looking little flower. But then following that, the flower will produce a number of little fruits that are all clustered together, sort of like a big old raspberry. And it's the most beautiful thing, even when it's in flower and when it's in fruit. And this is not the thing you'd want to eat for a wonderful snack on a hike, because everything is very, very bitter about this plant. And like I said, it's been used in local medicine as a medicinal plant for hundreds of years. In fact, it's been used so much that it is possibly on the decline in some places where it grows. So, and I know a lot of people have heard of this thing. I guess I need to give you a hint.
I think you better give us a hint.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
If you do dig this up, you will find the roots are very golden. And
golden.
Golden.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to figure out the rest of the name. I'm not quite sure how I got the rest of its name, but we could think of a sea mammal for the rest of the hint. I know this sounds pretty silly, but this is one of the most fantastic native species that we have in the mountains. It's a very widespread plant too that grows from New York down to Alabama and over to Kansas kind of thing. But it just barely gets into South Carolina. We have one report. Actually, Patrick McMillan got it in one place in Pickens County, the only South Carolina location that I know of.
Well, the Hoovers are really wonderful citizens of Saluda. And you know, I used to go to Saluda all the time. We would go trudging around, and I never have seen this, but I think Rebecca's got it figured out.
Golden seal?
Yes, it's golden seal.
Amanda helped.
Oh, it's beautiful, John. It really
is. And, you know, I don't know much about this plant. I've never collected it to make a specimen. And you know, maybe that wouldn't be such a great idea. I just kind of think that what I hear is that it is harvested in great numbers, and I think that sure enough, some of the populations are probably in decline because of that. So that if you are interested in taking golden seal, that is, if you get it from one of these, you know, medicine shops around town at the mall.
Okay.
Make sure that the product that they're selling is from a sustainable source. That is, it's not collected from the wild.
All right. Okay. It's interesting. I'm not surprised that Patrick would be the one to find it, because he seems to have a remarkable ability to find things in places where they're not usually found. He's a great addition to the botanical community. Y'all have a great group of people, and we're glad to welcome Matt too, because his degree was, I think, in botany as well, or whatever they call botany these days. John, you're so nice about helping people, and they don't know what in the heck is taking over their grass or just the beautiful thing they found on a walk in the woods. And if people want to get a plant identified, what's the best way to get it to you to do that?
Well, it's real easy, and like I said earlier, with this plant, we get a lot of pictures sent to us as email attachments, and that's a real easy process, usually. Sometimes if the picture's a little bit out of focus or whatever, it might be kind of hard to identify it then. So send us a good picture. Otherwise, you could bring it to us, or if you're close to Columbia, or mail it to me in a little baggie if you have a weed or something that you want to identify.
All right. Well, John, thank you, and I hope that you get a room full of bright minds, and that they remember to wear, they don't show up in their flip-flops, that they wear their proper footwear, because they're going to have some great adventures with you.
And I'm going to have some great adventures with them, too. It all starts on the 21st.
Well, we'll be saying our prayers for you, and thank you, John, for everything you do for us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you so much. We have our next caller is Claudia, who is from Augusta, Georgia, right down there across the Savannah River. Claudia, thank you for calling. And what's happening down there? Are y'all having some hot weather too?
We have had some real hot weather, but right now it's pretty moderate. We've been in the 80s all day.
Whoa, how wonderful. Oh. Well, is there something?
But I have a problem with watermelon. My son has insisted that he plants watermelon where we live in. And for 2 years he planted them and had no yield. This year he's getting yield, but what's happening? They're getting as large as a grapefruit and a half, and then they bust open. So we don't know what we're not doing right or what we're doing wrong.
Oh, my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. Well, I don't know much about growing watermelons, except they need lots and lots of pollinators, lots of trips by bees. Does anybody know what makes them decide to split open early? I mean...
No, I've heard a lot of them pop off the vine, but I've never heard of them just splitting in half on the vine. And I've actually never grown watermelon myself personally.
You know, Tony tells me sometimes that tomatoes, if the water in the soil is inconsistent, and then they got a lot of water, can split open. So do you think possibly if they haven't been irrigated and they went through a dry period and then got a lot of water, that might make them split open?
That definitely sounds plausible, and that's something that could probably be solved by putting down a nice layer of mulch. That could help protect some of those moisture changes.
Yeah, try to hold the moisture.
But if you're getting fruit, I guess you're almost there.
Almost there. So let's hope that before the summer's over, y'all are going to have a nice juicy watermelon and to bring to the table. Call us back or send us an email and let us know, and I'll try to check with Tony Melton and give an answer next week too. Irene is calling us, and she's right here in beautiful Sumter, South Carolina. Hi, Irene. Are you close to town, or are you a little bit out of town?
No, I'm in town.
Okay, well, thank you for calling. What's happening at your in-town garden?
Well, I have a question about crepe myrtles.
All right.
I bought my house in '98, and there was a small crepe myrtle tree in front of my window. And now it's big, and people are telling me that the roots can damage the foundation.
Oh, well, I don't think...
if that's true, what should I do with the tree?
If it were a oak tree or something like that, but what do you think about a crepe myrtle?
No, crepe myrtle is it's a smaller tree, and so its root system, it is a nice root system since it is a tree, but it's not very vigorous. It's not like an oak tree or a large pecan tree or something. I've never heard of them having any issues.
And I don't see a lot of above ground roots with them, do you?
I haven't noticed too many.
And you see them a lot near sidewalks and along streets, and I've never seen the roots pop them up too much. So I'd say leave it. It's beautiful. It's near the house. Just lightly prune it in the winters, never hack it back.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay, and that's true. We always encourage people to go to Clemson HGIC's website and learn how to properly prune a crepe myrtle. Do not let somebody just go out there and whack it down. Susan's calling us from West Columbia, right next to the capital city. Susan, I hope you're a little bit cooler over there than you are in the famously hot capital. Are you there?
Yes.
Hey, Susan, what's your question tonight?
Well, I didn't have a question. I had some information for Amanda. I had called a while back because I've got 4 lilac bushes, and she said she never heard of lilacs growing and blooming well in South Carolina, and I said this was a southern lilac. So I looked up the information. It's a Syringa laciniata, and or a cutleaf lilac. It is a true Syringa. It is a true lilac, and they grow and bloom beautifully in the South. I read about it years ago in Southern Living. I don't know what year, but it was an old Southern lilac was the name of the article. And I just wanted to know that they do grow, and that's the one that I was talking about.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that information, and I hope next year when it's blooming that you will send us some pictures, and we'll put them up and show them and share them with everybody if you would.
Okie doke.
All right. Thank you so much. What fun news. You need to find out about that and start growing it at Moore Farmers Botanical Garden, don't you?
Sounds beautiful.
Okay. We were saying it was a little hot to go out and garden, but you said that there's a way we can garden and not have to break a sweat. So we're going to learn about that, and while Rebecca and I make our way over to the side counter, we're going to check in with Teresa and the chatters. Teresa?
Thanks, Amanda. Goodness, my fingers are getting tired. I can't keep up with the conversation. So if I don't answer your question, please, you will not offend me if you ask it again. I wanted to make sure we took a moment to recognize some very familiar faces here on the set of Making It Grow. A lot of Clemson Extension folks headed down to Mobile, Alabama, that's right, for the NACAA, National Association of County Agricultural Agents, isn't that a mouthful, annual meeting. And a few of our members received some awards. Jonathan Croft received the Achievement Award, and absent from this photo, but right here live on the set of Making It Grow, Amanda McNulty received the DSA, the Distinguished Service Award, which is the highest achievement you can receive from NACAA. So congratulations to Jonathan and Amanda on their magnificent achievements. Now let's check in with Amanda and her guest at the side counter.
Thank you, Teresa. It was an honor, and I thank my fellow agents who selected me. There are many people who are far more worthy of it than I am, but it was an honor, and I thank you all. And Jonathan certainly does deserve it because he's really top flight. Rebecca, said that when she made her first terrarium, she didn't really know what she was doing, but it has become a passion.
Yes, very much. It started as a hobby, and I'm addicted to it, and I absolutely love it and call myself a terrarium-aholic because I love it so much.
I think that's a pretty good addiction to have. And what exactly is a terrarium? What's the definition of a terrarium?
So there's two kinds of terrariums. There's opened and closed, but a terrarium basically is growing plants, or actually any living. There's a lot with animals also. We're focusing on plants today.
Oh, that's right. You could have a terrarium with animals. Sure.
In usually more commonly a closed environment, which is what we're going to focus on most today. But there's also open terrariums, like this one here in the cylinder. An open terrarium is kind of more like a potted container. A terrarium must always have a clear surrounding, like a glass jar. You can use colored glass if you like, but you don't want it to be opaque. And the open terrariums have the plant in a glass container, but no hole in the bottom, basically. And a closed terrarium has the lid on it. That's the most common kind.
And it needs to be, the closed ones particularly have to be glass or clear because the sunlight has to come in, is that correct?
Yes, your lid can be opaque, like the one we're doing today, but the sides need to be clear so the sunlight can come in. So the plants can grow.
Okay, well, and you've got some beautiful ones here, and tell me, some of these containers are very elaborate. Is it getting to be more and more challenging for you?
Yes, more and more. I always like to try to find the really unique containers now. I started very simple with actually just a canister, which is the one here on the left. And then as I really dove into this hobby, I got more and more elaborate. The ones in the front are beautiful, different ornate glassware. One of my favorites is a Wardian case, which looks, it's in the front here, that looks kind of like a greenhouse.
It does.
Really historic type of terrarium. So the more I got into it, the more and more ornate I got with my containers, and have some that are even hanging. But it's great to start simple when you're doing it the first time.
Now, you keep yours inside, and what exposure do you give them?
A bright window. They want to have a bright window. If you have a darker window, your plants aren't going to grow as well. But the brighter the window, the better your terrariums are going to grow.
So you don't want the sun to shine directly on it and burn them up, but just real bright.
Right, exactly.
Well, do you think we could learn how to do one?
Yes, best way to learn how to build a terrarium is to do it hands-on.
All right.
There's a few things you need to know, and I'll tell you what they are as we go through building it. So one of the most important things is activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is what allows the air to stay clean in your terrarium. It helps with any of those scents you might get from water sitting in there with it being a closed container.
So it won't smell musty.
Right, and then the carbon helps purify the air as it's being closed.
Well, where do you find activated charcoal?
At a pet store. You actually get it at a pet store, and it's used for fish filters commonly, and it's a great tool to have in your terrarium and really important to have for a successful.
So how much of that are we going to put in, Rebecca?
So depending on your terrarium size, you just want to sprinkle some in the bottom. No magic number.
I'm going to see what it feels like.
Sure. And then you just want to kind of spread it over the bottom. It won't completely cover it. You're not putting a very thick layer, but it just allows you to gently cover it. There's no magic science to it because it depends on your container size.
Okay. All right. So we've got activated charcoal, not too much, just a little bit on the bottom.
Just a little bit.
That's the first step. What comes next?
Next is the potting soil. And the potting soil is nothing fancy. You can use potting soil that has fertilizer or the little white perlite pieces in it, or you can just use plain potting soil with none of it in there. And that's what we have here. And you want to make sure that you only do with a container this size around 2 inches.
Now, why don't you want to just fill it all the way up?
You get less and less room for your plants to grow.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, some of the more taller ones that you have, you can put more soil in there because it has more room to grow. But you don't want to go crazy on your soil. So I would say this is a really good.
And I think it's fun to see what happens when they do start to fill up. I think you said it's fun because it just looks like a real little jungle in there. If we can see on this one, the plant has grown to kind of fill the pot.
Yes.
So we want to give it plenty of room to do that.
I have some that look a little bit more overgrown. I like that look in that part of my house, and some that kind of look more exactly put together.
So we have activated charcoal, just a little bit, and then potting soil, just any good potting soil. And then what's the topping that we've got?
Peat moss. So you can buy peat moss at any local garden store. You're going to buy it most commonly in a block.
A block, because you don't need a whole bag.
Right. What you want to do is you're going to pull off part of that block and soak it in water, a bowl of water, because peat needs to be moist. You're going to then take your peat, a handful, you're going to squeeze it out. I pre-squeezed this, but you can see some water coming out of it.
Yeah.
And then you're just going to sprinkle it on the top.
Now, what's the purpose of the peat moss?
Peat helps retain water, helps retain moisture, so you don't have to water as often.
All right.
And it's really nice with peat is it turns light brown, and it kind of gives you a signal that you need to water soon.
Oh, so a visual clue. Okay. Well, it looks good so far, but I think it's going to get real exciting now.
Yes. Now it's time for the plants. With the plants, peperomias, which is the one that I'm holding, are really great. They're hard to kill. Great starter plant for a terrarium. Okay. You can also use aluminum plants. You can use mosaic plants. Ferns are great for high humidity environments. But you're just going to take your little plant out. Made a little bit of a mess. Every gardener does. And then you're just going to kind of shove them in there. There's no science. Just remember that on this one, you're going to see the outside edges. So I want it to look pretty from the outside, not from just the top.
Okay.
So you can keep on adding more and more and more.
I'll hold this here and you can dump the extra soil there. Okay.
So you just keep on adding. And
it's fun because even though they're not flowering, we've got a lot of color, texture, size difference.
Yes.
It's a very lively grouping of plants. So you can make selections so that it's very interesting.
Exactly. Rarely are you ever going to have terrariums that really bloom for you. But a few times you can do a few different things. African violets, some orchids, but you just want to kind of add them in. I think we'll start simple. It's best to always start simple. Sometimes you have to come in, add a little bit of soil on the top, just like you would pot a container.
Sure.
And you're going to just kind of baby them and let them grow in some.
And then what's this last thing we're going to pop in?
These are, you can use begonias, you can do all kinds of things.
Okay.
These I had been just potting up in my house. They're really nice and tiny. And you can just stick them in. Now you don't want to always overfill on them, but you can just stick him in there.
Okay.
And that's probably all
already really attractive. Now, how about getting it settled in and watered? How would you go about doing that?
Well, what you want to do is then take a cup of water and just lightly water the top of it.
All right.
You can also put it under the sink, but you want to be careful. You don't want to overwater it.
Because it doesn't have a hole in it, so be really careful about overwatering.
But a cup is really nice. You can control it
a lot just slowly till you feel like the soil is damp. And then, do I go ahead and put the top on?
Well, I'm going to show you what you do after that. So after that, if you're in a really bright window, you want to make sure that you spray it about once a week. So you just spray it, and then you do that, and then you're good to go. And then you put the top on. Okay. Now you have a beautiful terrarium.
So about once a week, go around and spray it. And you said that you sometimes like to kind of air it out a little bit. How do you do that?
I do. Every few weeks I like to come and I like to take the lid off just to give it some fresh oxygen. And also a lot of times if it's in a bright window, it'll start to fog. And then when it starts to fog, mine's near a vent in my house, so it gets cold and hot very quickly. Kind of just clears it out, and then I just put the lid back on.
Okay, so take the lid off for a day or so and then and keep back at it. And the fertilizer is not much of an issue, you said.
I never fertilize my terrariums. You can if you'd like. If you do, I choose using a water-soluble fertilizer. Put it in your spray bottle, like a 10-10-10 or a Super Thrive. You can spray it every time.
Okay, well this is great fun, and I'm afraid that you've probably started more people on the path towards terrarium addiction, but I think it's pretty cool, and we'll hope you'll bring them back to visit, and I'm going to try my hand at it. I think it'd be fun on these hot days to do some gardening inside.
I hope so. I'll probably have even more the next time I come.
So. Cool. All righty. Well, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We are now going to go and visit Beech Island, which is near where my mother grew up. She used to go there and stay some, and it is the home of Jinx Farmer. His family's been there for a while, and it's the place where he is really fine-tuning his relationship with the soil. I think you're going to enjoy visiting with Jinx Farmer, a plants man.
We are in Beech Island, South Carolina, near Aiken, visiting the family farm of Jinx Farmer. Jinx describes himself as a plantsman, but all over the United States and beyond, he is known as for his wonderful work at Riverbank Zoo and Botanical Gardens, Moore Farms Botanical Gardens, and now as an author of Deep-Rooted Wisdom. And Jinx, we are delighted to be here. And tell me how important soil is in your life and the soil upon which we are standing.
Well, in my life, how about in everybody's life? It's what our food is made of, what our body is made of. It's what we're all made of. It's what we eat and what we enjoy as beauty. This soil is particularly important to me because I live on it and I grow on it, and it's been part of my family for 2 decades, 2 generations really. So we do everything we can here to not only take care of the soil, but to build on it and to create a whole world underground.
One of the new things you've got I think involves wood chips because I see huge piles of them. Tell me how you are incorporating those.
There's a cool new system based on mushroom and fungi. Now, of course, mushrooms are not new, but we've learned to appreciate and to kind of harvest the power of mushrooms. So what we do is lay out thick layers of wood chips, and those wood chips then are inoculated with spawn of different mushrooms, and we're using a native one. Those mushrooms, over the course of 18 months to 2 years, basically eat the wood chips and leave us with about an inch layer of this beautiful topsoil.
In addition to that, cover crops are something that are really becoming more important, and I see a variety, some of which are pretty unusual. Let's talk about some of those cover crops.
We're all used to cover crops of peas and beans and red clover, and we use all of those, but in addition, we use parsley and turnips, orange cosmos. There's a whole lot of new research, like a lot of this came from Clemson, that shows that turnips, Swiss chard, all the things in that family actually produce a gas from the roots that inhibit nematodes. So not only are we kind of cleaning the soil, but when those crops are dying, then we just chop them up on site and they become what we call a chop and drop mulch.
All this work is being done primarily for one beautiful plant that has existed in gardens for generations. When did you first encounter crinums, and what got you so fascinated by them?
My first crinum I acquired, I guess, when we moved here in the early 70s, and I now know that it had been here about 50 years. It may be in flower today, Amanda, so that means that that bulb, that one crinum lily bulb, is over 80 years old. There's something to me that's really beautiful and sustainable about something that can live so long, have such a massive underground structure, go away in the wintertime, and then come back up with this like ephemeral, kind of fragile beauty in the summertime.
And one thing about crinums, I think, that is they're very pest resistant, have very few diseases, and in all of your gardens, it sounds like sustainability. Do you try to design gardens that can exist with the least amount of input after they're established?
Oh yeah, I think it's critical. I think our whole landscape industry is moving toward that and has to move toward that, and that's what I get to use this place as kind of a laboratory. So I try all different things here, and then when I do a garden design, either public or for a private home, I use those same techniques to make a landscape that's very low water use. You know, I don't use any synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, to make it easy for people to enjoy, but also better for the long term for all of us.
Jinx, so many plants can only be moved in the fall or in the dead of winter. What about these crinums? How easy are they to grow and to move around?
They're so easy that they're one of the few things that you see left over on old farms and cemeteries. As far as moving them, the challenge is just physical, you know, because these are massive things that can weigh hundreds of pounds. But we do it all year round. Now that's our climate is zone 8B, so we're a warm climate. Our soil is always fairly warm. So we just dig them. We would dig a clump like this, and there'll be multiple bulbs, like a bunch of grapes almost, and we just pull those different bulbs off and take them to friends or put them out in new areas.
Well, I would like to find one, with your help, that maybe you will let me take home and start in my St. Matthew's garden. And I think there are many people who would also like to know more about crinums and the work that you're doing here. So tell us the best way to find out about Jinx Farmer Plantsman.
We're on Facebook, and we have a webpage called jinxfarmer.com.
Thank you for this wonderful visit.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's go get a bulb.
Unusual for someone to be as articulate as Jinx and still be so energetic in the garden, such a hard worker. And I really encourage you to try to find a copy of his book and read it. And if you don't grow crinums, they're just wonderful. And we were just saying we'd both like to have a few more. I have a few in my garden, but you're getting ready to establish some too.
I know, a nice clump for our new yard.
Yeah.
So.
And this isn't exactly a crinum, but it was the right color.
I know, it's a naked lady lily, I believe.
That's what we call it.
And Chinese abelia.
And really the Chinese abelia is a fun, big plant. And you know, these blooms, if people can see them, they start out kind of greenish and then they turn kind of a pink and brown. And I think you get a long, interesting season from them. So anyway, it might be something you'll want to try. And Pat McDaniel, who runs our office for us, and I were looking at it. We think maybe that they're pretty deer resist. Nothing's, you know, but it sounds like deer kind of leave them alone. So if we may try to root some and get some going in Pat's yard, because she has a lot of trouble getting anything going with those old deer, I declare. Anyway, we have Bruce calling us from Richmond Hill, Georgia. Hey, Bruce, thank you for calling us tonight.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
How you doing, ma'am?
I'm good.
I'm fine. Hey, ma'am, my grandmother used to grow something called a sweet shrub. Yeah. And once I retired from the military, I went and found one. But when do they bloom?
Well, who wants to talk about sweet shrub for us?
Are we talking calycanthus?
Yeah.
Or? Well, see, my knowledge of their bloom time is a little bit off because I'm thinking up north, but I'd say probably we're looking at maybe mid-spring down here.
Yeah,
like
it's
April.
a pretty early flower. And you know, one thing is it's you really have to be out there looking at it, because unless you get one of the real fancy new ones, the color kind of, it's almost a little brownish, don't you think?
Yeah, it's kind of like a purpley, kind of going to brown.
And so it doesn't scream at you across the yard. So I think the best thing to do, Bruce, is for you just to start really paying attention to it. And so we tell people that they should walk their yard every day and look at everything there. And that way you won't miss the wonderful surprises that Mother Nature has for you out there. Now that plant will spread a little bit on you, so you be careful where you put it. Okay. Teresa, we're wondering how, if we got people sitting on the fence or if they're all in there just chatting their little hearts away.
There are always people sitting on the fence, but that's okay. We don't mind if you're participating in the conversation or sort of just learning vicariously. We welcome you any way you want to get involved. Speaking of plants surprising you, I think these tomato plants surprised our Making It Grow Facebook fan who sent them in. They sort of look like a Halloween decoration. So if you've ever experienced this is called cat facing, and it's a disorder that occurs when cold temperatures are about when it is setting fruit. So later on in the season, when it warms up, the fruit should be just fine, but there are also cultivars specifically that are resistant to this particular cat-facing disorder. For information about tomatoes or whatever you're trying to grow, you can always visit the Home and Garden Information Center, clemson.edu/HGIC. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you, and I want to thank all the people who do share pictures with us on Facebook. It's really fun to get up in the morning and look and see what's there. So if you haven't been doing that and you've got something that's fun, share it with us, because it really does make our day to see, and we like to hear from everybody too. George is calling us from Greenville, South Carolina. George, we're happy to hear from you, and you're in a beautiful city, but it sounds like maybe you've got a little something we could help you with.
Yes, we had Leland cypresses that front our property, which fronts Interstate 85, and as you know and reported last week, the demise of those are pretty widespread in Greenville. Would Molly Stevens hollies, or what else would you suggest we should use? Nellie Stevens, my wife, corrected me. Thank you. We are beginners. What would you suggest we do to replace the Lelands that are dying from the, there's a long botanical name, whatever it is.
It's an awful old disease, let's just say that, yeah. Well, I'm going to, before I'm going to turn it over to our panelist, I'm going to say that you might want to consider picking 2 or 3 plants if it's a long hedge, and putting a group of maybe 3, and then a group of 3, and a group of 3. And that way, if something happens, you won't be just completely lost and lose your whole hedge. What are some of the large shrubs that you like to see that might be nice to use in a hedge situation? Do you have any recommendations?
I mean, I kind of like hollies myself, but
yeah, they're pretty, aren't they?
I do like Nellie Stevens. I mean, it grows really fast, but it's maybe not the strongest fruiting cultivar.
But just for cover and to give them some privacy. Yeah. And think of anything else you'd like to throw in with there?
I'd like Matt. I'm a huge holly fan. The nice thing is you get evergreen. They're simple to take care of. They're great in wreaths, and they get a lot of interest. So for something very easy care, low maintenance, you can't beat a holly.
Well, and you know what I think is fun in wreaths and pretty easy too are some of the cryptomerias.
That's true.
And there are a huge number of cultivars, and that's a really, it would be, it's a conifer would give you a little bit of difference. So you might want to talk to one of the good nurseries in Greenville and get some ideas on them. A lot of times Thuja Green Giant is being offered as a substitute, but they are seeing when it's planted in monocultures that it's having some of the same problems. So I would not go back with that. But good luck to you, and I'm glad y'all are asking questions. That's really fun. Daryl's calling us from Camden, South Carolina, right up the road. Hey, Daryl, how are you, and how can we help you tonight? Daryl?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have some tomato plants I have a question about.
All right.
I've had the green worms on them and got rid of those with 7 dust and pulled the worms off. And then I had blooms all over. They're about 5, 6 foot tall. And I was wondering, I have no fruit whatsoever. And I put bonnet bloom on them, on the blooms and all, and then I'll get their fruit. What can I do to get tomatoes?
Okay. So you're having flowers, but you're not getting fruit set.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody have any ideas? Maybe the heat?
Some kind of pollination issue, right? Because I know tomatoes are a little bit sensitive in terms of the sort of temperatures they need to pollinate.
Temperatures, yeah, and it's been hot lately, and sometimes the pollen is rendered sterile, I think, by the heat, isn't it? So maybe if we, as we get some cooler days, do you think if his plants continue to survive that maybe he'll start getting a little fruit set when we see some cooler temperatures?
And fertilize them too. A lot of people they'll fertilize at the beginning of the season with their vegetable garden, but keep giving them that feed every once in a while so that they can kind of keep getting that food as the season goes through too.
But careful not to over-fertilize, because you don't want to run and put them back into a vegetative state. Is that correct? Okay. Right. So we hope that when the temperatures cool a little bit. Well, you always have fun things going on down there. Tell me what's coming up and how we can find out about things for the future.
We have 2 very exciting classes coming up. One is next Saturday, August the 9th. It's a pine cone topiary class. So a way to bring the outdoors inside in kind of a whimsical way. We're going to be making beautiful pine cone topiaries for your home. So it's kind of a nice way to also get ready for the seasons of fall.
Oh, fun.
So, and you're going to build everything in class, and you're going to take home a really nice topiary.
Cool.
So that's next Saturday. And then on August 16th, which is also a Saturday, we're doing a landscapes for small spaces, big ideas for little gardens, which is going to be taught by Bryce Ling, who's just a recently retired professor of North Carolina State University. So definitely worth listening to. He's an amazing, amazing professor. Has won every teaching award that North Carolina State has to offer.
Gosh.
So definitely worth to come to. But to find out about our classes and our events we have coming up, you can always visit our website, which is www.moorefarmsbg.org.
And it's moorefarmsbg.org.
Okay. Or you can contact myself, Rebecca Turk, at 843-373-8068. I can tell you all the information you want to know about it.
Your Day is a Clemson program that comes on Monday through Thursday at 12, and whenever I'm in the car or someplace where I can cut the radio, and I love to listen to it. And on Thursday, July the 31st, the wonderful people at the South Carolina Botanical Garden with Lisa Wagner kind of taking the lead there are going to be answering questions about insects and heat, and boy, we're in the middle of that now. So be sure to tune in this Thursday, July the 31st, to the Your Day program and enjoy learning from those wonderful people at the South Carolina Botanical Garden. Teresa, she's so busy typing, I don't think she's going to have time to say goodbye, but we appreciate everything you do for us, everything you do for water quality in South Carolina, and for making the show fun, too.
Thank you so much. I always have a great time here on the set of Making It Grow, though sometimes I am so engrossed in trying to answer people's questions or be a part of that discussion that I miss what else is going on. So earlier there was a question about what material can be used to build beehives, and I did find a publication from Oregon State that said cedar would be an okay material to use, but I don't know the age of that publication, and there's more and more research going on about honeybees these days. So if you're looking for information, you could contact Jennifer Saruta. She's our bee expert at Clemson, and probably the easiest way to get there would be to just do a search with Clemson and beekeeping, and that should get you there. Amanda, back to you.
Okay. Thank you. And summertime, we've got a lot of southern peas coming in, and they are delicious on rice. And we are going to next week have a segment about the Rice Museum in Georgetown. Oh. I think y'all would enjoy that. Y'all are new to South Carolina. Matt, we thank you for making the journey. We are happy that you're in South Carolina and adding to the wonderful staff at Moore Farms Botanical Garden. And Rebecca, it's such a treat when you come. And your wonderful little friends that you brought with us, it's a great addiction that Rebecca has. And gardening is a great addiction, and we thank you for being a part of it with us.
Making It Grow is brought to you in part by Santee Cooper, South Carolina's state-owned electric and water utility. More information on green power and energy conservation programs online at santeecooper.com. The South Carolina Department of Agriculture, reminding you that certified South Carolina agricultural products help make South Carolina grow. McLeod Farms in McBee, South Carolina. This family farm offers seasonal produce, including over 22 varieties of peaches. Glory Foods, celebrating Southern food with a soulful heritage. Glory Foods, a way of inviting South Carolina back to the dinner table. FTC Diversified, a proud part of your local communities, providing communication, entertainment, and security. Art Fields, a 10-day art competition in Lake City, South Carolina. Additional funding provided by International Paper.